The Diary of Thoughts, Part 14. Youth and Old Age, About the Four Seasons. Written by c.Pacheco. This part of my thoughts refers to a subject that is very sensitive to me. Old age was always something very difficult for me to accept, maybe because my grandparents raised me for a significant period of my life. That situation obliged me to assist to painful agony and everything that is connected to that context. At the same time, by this same fact of being raised with older people and always learning from them, I happen to feel more comfortable and reassured when I'm having a conversation with somebody else older than me. Even today at 64 years old, I'm still learning from older people. Some other times I also learn lots of things with the new generations as they represent a new opening of spirit related to new ideas, new concepts, and even philosophy, since everybody has their philosophy. Since a tender age, I learned about the meaning that is to assist to a lethal disease, and so I learned to face and accept death as a natural fact of life. My grandfather always explained to me his concepts about life and death. As he was an atheist, those ideas were based on radical definitions, because when we believe in nothing, the rest of the events that life implicates become mere procedures, in this case concerning our beginning and mostly our end. One constant thought and question I had as a child was why we were born condemned to die. At the same time, I always thought that it would be too cruel and too illogical that the creation would impose us something like that without a purpose. There is a purpose for everything, and the mystery of life is based on an eternal continuity involving everything and everybody. The difficulty of identifying that purpose is nothing but the challenge that is given to the human spirit, to arrive naturally and spontaneously to a particular belief or conviction about our final destiny. It would be too sad to live without a purpose, and even atheists think and feel that there must be something else aside the apparent that is captured by our eyes. It would be too sad and cruel to be born condemned to die. Multiple questions and even metaphysical definitions are made regarding this subject, but in the end, the answer to this question and doubt is within each one of us. As I went through all the way, assisting and comparing the behavior of the different generations that were around my personal existence, I learned that youth and old age can be very similar in what concerns the states of mind. In fact, I often find cases of old young people and also young old people, independently from their age. I talk with youngsters that express themselves and think like seniors, and I talk with senior citizens who are even younger than the most of the youth that I know. Notions about youth and old age are also brought by time, and its related definitions and concepts. In physical terms, we have to consider that the genetic evolution of human beings works in the same direction but not necessarily in the same way and period of time. That's why we find young people who look much older than they are, and the opposite. The notions about the chart of age are so consolidated on people's minds that a teenager considers a person of middle age as an old person. The psychological element about oldness hits a reality, and some people just don't accept age as a natural process of nature. At the limit, I think that nobody does. There are only some that pretend to surmount this problem knowing that it will be there until the last moment of their lives. Others merely try to ignore it by building their comfort zone. Different psychological behaviors can happen when reaching the several seasons of age. Some people feel old when reaching 40 years old or even less. The notion about oldness is very subjective and also related to individual experiences along our lives. Some people just don't leave their lives, others leave 10 lives in one lifetime. The chart applied to this concept of young and old can have other consequences, as when society links these two different states of age with moral values, like a person on his 20s marrying another on his 50s. Once again, we are talking about the morals and standards that society artificially created to maintain us under moral and religious rules that have nothing to do with feelings. In fact, age has nothing to do with feelings, and that means that we can love an older or a younger person depending on that same degree of love. Apart from that, there is the logical element that has to be considered called time, as some people meet but they are just out of time and out of reach. It is true that we have to be realistic about time, but when feelings are implied on a relationship, time is relative because 10 years of happiness can replace a whole life of misery. There are thousands of examples like this in society, apart from the fact that there are also other situations in this same context that have as a final goal to attain a financial stability, but identical conditions also exist at the aim of some couples with the same age. It all depends on pure feelings, and that makes a radical and fundamental difference. People who are trapped in these types of conventionalism that limit existing feelings and its direct relationships, are condemned to live a life of misery by the fact that they can't assume what they would wish to assume. If not, they'll just keep on fooling themselves, and there is nothing worse than that, as we'll spend our entire life living unhappily. The conflict of generations is also extended to the majority of the society, always depending on the formation and education of each person, but primarily on their state of mind. In fact, age can exist physically or mentally, independently of age itself. As in other areas, history repeats, and the relationship between the various generations always bring different concepts and actions. This conflict is at the origin of serious problems of misunderstanding between parents and children, and also at a professional level later on in our lives. Social conflicts as discrimination based on age can ruin world economy. Everything is interdependent. Nowadays these conflicts have a natural tendency to be developed, as new technologies are introduced and are linked with other ways to interpret and react to information, and also the related timing to respond according to that data. With that information, a particular kind of confrontation, different from some decades ago, is present in society, as the rhythm and perspective of reasoning of the new generations is entirely different from before. This rhythm becomes a confrontation between the various mentalities and states of mind. Images also generated new mentalities and manipulated behaviors. The interpretation given to those images by the new generations is different from the old ones, as the tendency of every generation is to accommodate to their old values, to the years that match their formation and personal evolution. Depending on each context, we can ask at what point evolution benefits new generations since we live on an unmeasured technological development. Society takes the risk that technological evolution becomes a negative factor regarding social relationships between different generations. Social life between parents and their children becomes hard to handle, as youngsters are dependent on technology as a way to live in a virtual world. The communication between parents and children, it's just not there anymore since they live in different worlds. Since a child, I always appreciated the moment of a meal with family. This practice represents one of the most important moments of each day of ours. At the table we can discuss our daily problems, we can laugh or cry, we can even fall asleep at the table. But the important thing is that communication between different generations is present in a daily family life. The inherited tendency of the young generations to contest everything and to feel more important and intelligent by doing so is entirely wrong, as any other identical assumption in other different relational field. When we contest something just because we are older or younger than someone else, we lose reason in the first place. In fact, both generations are wrong while having this behavior. I was lucky and fortunate to have a father along with his father that taught me lots of positive things, as also a free mind he was. During my first years, which are the most important regarding absorbing information, I listened to every word of my father, and that learning made a predominant role in my life. But as I was used to communicating with older people, I also became aware of their problems as they represented my future. Later on, I wrote a small poem putting into evidence the final period of some people's lives, and at the same time I tried to analyze what they commented. After all, they were just having a déjà vu about their existence. Old Men Sitting on a Bench, at the Railway Station, narrated by BEUKEMA, Master of the Spoken Word. Written by c.Pacheco.
Old men sitting on a bench at the railway station. At the railway station, back hometown, there is a row of old men sitting down, like statues of marble strongly clenched. As you're waiting for the train and keep on walking, you become aware about their talking, wonders about the future, stories about the past, memories, it's what is left in their lives, dirty jokes about their friends, funny comments about their wives. Deep inside of them, old men, they don't like what they see, as they pity the new breed of slaves, all canned in those metal trains, coming and going like waves. Life, as always, two sides of the story, the power and the glory, the good and the bad, chapters of winners and losers. Life doesn't give a chance to many choosers. No way to decide which direction to go. Like the train following the tracks of its destiny, those old men are waiting for the last stop, and they will finally reach serenity. Time passed like a rolling stone. Soon there will be no flesh, but just bone. So life, let's get it over and done. Hey up there, destiny, do your job. Take that mob, the gentleman and the slob. Hey dark shadow, show yourself. Winners and losers, rich and poor, the dagger is going to get them, like anybody else.
The message that I learned in my life, and I can say that corresponds to the last years of my existence, is that we have to respect our natural cycle, as the cycles of nature, the cycles of creation, as we all make part of it. In reality, I was always told that the period of our actual existence matches the 4 seasons of life. As you notice, trees are like human beings and their leaves and branches change constantly. When those leaves turn yellow, it means that another cycle is about to end. Still, a new spring is coming. Sometimes I think if there was no hope at all, if we believed in nothing except what our eyes can reach, wouldn't it be sad? In spite of the uncertainty that resides in our minds, I think that there are fundamental questions that have their answer inside each one of us, leading us to an individual perception about the final moment, about our existence after all. Wouldn't be too much illogic to be born condemned to die, namely to finish, to end? Wouldn't it be like calling creation, our origins, as mere and human, sarcastic, mean and even evil? Doubt is a necessary element to assure the continuity of this dimension we are living in, otherwise, in some contexts, we would terminate with our lives. The final purpose of creation, maybe it is that human beings will reach a certain level of intelligence that allows us to maintain our actual dimension while understanding the next one, changing what we are, escaping from our primary instincts and start living based on different values and principles, mostly on feelings and understanding. Once we can reach that higher level, the winter of our lives will become an eternal spring. The Diary of Thoughts, end of part 14. Written by Carlos Pacheco. www.diaryofthoughts.com